welcome back. So lovely to see you here. Hope you all had the best week. Thank you for dropping by our YouTube channel again. As always, make sure to subscribe and follow us on all of our socials. You can see them all here. So things to consider. I'm not going to lie, there are a few cons when it comes to Japan in terms of weddings, but the pros far outweigh the cons. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a reality on how things are here generally and how weddings work for the most part. So I've got a few points to consider. Again, if you have any questions about any of this, just ask me in the comments. I'll always be super upfront and honest. After 20 years, I've seen it all, I've heard it all. There's plenty of workarounds. It just might not seem easy at the beginning, but there is always a way, and I always believe that you find the people you're meant to work with and find the team that you're meant to work with. So again, let's navigate sort of how to work within Japan and then kind of how to go off on your own too. Mention first some of the more obvious ones that will kind of determine if Japan is the place for you. Weddings are very much controlled by the venues, and the venues have a very set plan approach to the wedding. Everything's a set package. There's a little bit of flexibility for options, but it's all within that plan. So if you're coming to Japan and you don't want a set plan, you want a bit more flexibility, my suggestion then is to work with an external planner where that planner can connect with the venue and either navigate through all that or help negotiate for you. So that's my first pro tip. Check with the venue on how set they are with their plan, how flexible they are with outside vendors. I'll talk a little bit more in a couple of points about that as well. Something to consider, many of the couples who contact us are really in love with outdoor weddings. We love them too. We do them all over the world. We've done them here in Japan. For the most part, Japan doesn't do outdoor weddings for many reasons. For ceremonies and receptions, it's still obviously not the normal. They do it, but not that much. So if, again, this is something you want, I suggest connecting with a planner to help navigate through that. And then if you are really firm on an outdoor wedding, something to think about is a plan A and plan B in case of inclement weather, and do you have a plan B undercover option? Many venues care so much about the service and the hospitality, which is why things are generally indoors with maybe a little bit of an outdoor element. But if outdoor is really important to you, it's possible, but you kind of have to negotiate and navigate through that right at the beginning. Really important to consider is that there are many cultural differences in weddings that Japan doesn't understand, and perhaps if you're coming to Japan you don't understand how Japan does weddings. So to kind of alleviate that misunderstanding on both sides, we always suggest to either bring in a planner or someone that you trust, or a local contact, someone with the language skills who can communicate between both parties to make sure that communication is all smooth, that on the day will be smooth, that everybody understands each other. So really clear communication is so important, just so that all those little assumptions are correct. Each side knows what they want. You understand, what the venue is going to provide for you, and the venue understands what you need in terms of the style of your wedding. Japan does do a Western style wedding, but generally that Western style wedding is quite different to actually what we do in the West. There's certain elements that resonate, but the actual overall flow can be quite different sometimes. So really important to kind of nail down what's important to you and to communicate with your venue that they can actually fulfill that vision for you. So in my 20 years here in Japan, I've literally seen it all. Like, I've seen, an assumption on the couple's part that this was going to happen, but the venue never did that, or the venue was going to do something that the couple didn't want at all. So I guess the best example that comes to mind is we had a beautiful bride. She had 6 bridesmaids. the bride envisaged that she'd be getting ready with the bridesmaids, music, champagne, all of that, very regular and loved in a Western wedding. The venue had actually arranged 6 small little private cubicles for each bridesmaid, so no one was really getting ready together. It was silent and quiet and not at all the vision that the bride and her people wanted. So that's just kind of a quick example of how assumptions can be different, cultural differences, all of those little things. So I again really suggest to work with a planner or to bring in someone who can bridge that cultural gap for you and that communication barrier. And even if you end up working with like a venue that has an English speaker, make sure they understand what you want. They may understand like a Japanese version of a Western style wedding, but not what your image is. So again, just something to consider. I talked a little bit about it before, but I'll mention it again because it's worth mentioning. We can't simply transplant what we might do in our home countries to Japan. We do have to work with the quirks and intricacies of Japan. So that's something really important to keep in mind. I totally forgot to tell you all the most important thing, so I'm going to do a lovely voiceover over some very pretty photos to fill you in on something super important, and that's the topic of bring-in fees. This is something that's just very specific to Japan actually. So whatever venue you opt for, if it's a beautiful venue and you're firm on the venue, that's great, lock that in, but make sure before you sign any contracts or agreements or deposits that you find out about the bring-in fees. This is the way Japanese venues handle having and taking care of an entire set plan. So basically it means if you would like to bring in any of your own vendors, perhaps your own hair and makeup artist, photographer, videographer, even your own dress, you may actually have to end up paying your venue a fee, which is basically cancelling their in-house vendors. Actually need to pay your venue a fee to bring in your own preferred vendors. So it's something really, really important to check. This does happen a lot here, especially for photography, hair and makeup, and even florists, and it's not unheard of for the dress. A lot of venues will lock you into using their own boutiques and wedding dress suppliers, so just make sure to check on that. If you're working with an external planner or a freelance planner, they may be able to help you negotiate on all of this, but just don't get hit by anything hidden with bring-in fees that could crop up a little bit later on. So you may find with your venue it's a really, really cheap plan, everything's included, the whole lot, it looks great on paper, but just remember you have no choice. All of those vendors are being controlled by the venue. The venue has absolute control over who comes in. So once again, if A-list vendors are really important to you, if you have your dream team of incredible artists that you wish to come in and create your magical, magical wedding, then there will be bring-in fees. Be prepared for that. That's the way Japan works, very unfortunately. But again, if you're working with a great freelance planner, they may be able to help you negotiate all that, but just be aware that that may be the case walking into any of those venues with very set plans. If you have any questions about the bring-in fees, just ask them here in the comment section and I'll get back to you straight away. Thanks so much. Pretty pictures finished. Something really important to quickly check in about, if you're wanting to do something maybe outdoors, a bit bespoke, national park, any of that kind of thing, basically you're going to need a permit for everything. So just make sure before moving forward you understand all the logistics involved. If you're working with a venue here in Japan, especially when it comes to the hours, of the reception, receptions are usually just 2 to 3 hours. So if you're envisaging something a little bit longer, you'll really have to make sure that that's fully understood at the beginning. You may end up having to do a buyout of the venue. Some venues here in Japan have multiple weddings per day. We know one venue here in Tokyo that can handle up to 20-25 weddings a day. So you really just have to be aware of the timing. If you're wanting a big dance party afterwards, if you're wanting to extend to an after party, make sure all of that is really understood, because you don't want to get hit with any bills afterwards. Japan is very strict on timing. It's little bit different to our own home countries. It can be a bit more flexible. Staff have to get last trains home. There's many things to consider. So definitely when it comes to timing, make sure you understand exactly what's included. If you want to negotiate and have longer time for the reception or after party, dance party, whatever, make sure all of that's communicated very clearly right from the get-go. Last little tip to finish on is a little bit more about the finances. So Japan really isn't a cheap country. When it comes to weddings, not a lot is negotiable. The price is the price. If you're going with a set plan at a venue, everything will pretty much be all-inclusive. And so that could be a good thing, but everything's inclusive, and again, no flexibility. If you're going a little bit more bespoke, planning things yourself, maybe working with an external planner, bringing in all of your beautiful vendors, making it absolutely magical, those costs might add up a little bit more than you initially envisaged. So that's just something to keep in mind when it comes to budgeting, negotiating, all of those things. There is a 10% tax in Japan, something to think about, and I think that's pretty much all about pricing, but just again, not really negotiable. But you might have some power with your venue. They might, throw in like a bride's room or a getting ready room for something else. So yeah, hope that helps. So again, a good suggestion is to invest in an outside planner who will advocate for you and work for you. Most venues in Japan actually will have an on-site planner, which is lovely and fine. Remember, they are working for the venue. If you bring in an external planner, that planner is working for you to get the most out of your day, maximize however you want to celebrate with your family. They are there for you. So that's kind of the little difference, and then they can both work together to give you the celebration of your dreams. Thank you so much. We're kind of to the end of it. I hope you feel like an excitement and a passion about Japan as much as I do. I could talk about Japan all day long. Japan, which is great because in our upcoming episodes we're doing a whole episode dedicated to Mount Fuji as a location, and sort of over the course of the next few months and this year we'll be touching on all different other locations Japan-wide. I could talk about it all the time. If you have any questions, please hit me up in the comments. I'm so happy always to be upfront and honest. I'll especially help you with the finances and the budgeting, and at least give you like a realistic ballpark of kind of what you'd be looking at for a Japanese destination wedding. Small scale, large scale, high end, scaled back a little bit. Happy to help at all. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. I'll be back next week. I'm so excited to kind of share this journey with you guys. And like I said, Japan really is the destination right now for destination weddings. It's so on trend, but it's still kind of off trend because it's still very much the road less traveled. So for couples considering Japan for your wedding, you really are some of the first, your trailblazers. We really hope that our paths cross here. Thank you so much for listening. Have the best week. I'll catch up with you soon, and let love reign. Bye.